Spectre, welcome back to the morning session. I can confirm you are live on YouTube.
Right, good afternoon. Is everyone available who's needed to be available for this next session? And I've got a list of people for this. So there's Mr. from the council. We're looking at Mr. Mayett and Ms. Humphreys, maybe.
I'm here, sir.
And from the appellant, there's Mr. Grady, Mr. Ross, and Mr. Morgan. Is that the case?
That's correct, sir.
Yes, sir.
That doesn't mean that. Have I got everyone? Yes. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yeah. Right. So what I'd like to do is I've got an agenda that I've put forward. So the agenda's just a few points, really. I mean, we don't have to necessarily deal with it all in through this agenda, but it's to try and just points that are there to remind that these are areas of disagreement, probably. But I've put the policies forward, but there's also a document that was sent in, I think, by the appellant yesterday. That's the subcommittee Tenterden Sport, Leisure and Community Facilities Review. Has everyone seen that or aware of it anyway? Yeah. And I don't know whether I'm not sure who's going to be referring to it, but anyway, that's something that's been put forward. There's also the other documents that I've mentioned, which is the local plan policy, the playing pitch strategy, and then there is something in the draft neighbourhood plan that was mentioned in the statement of common ground as well, I think. I mean, the statement of common ground is really to do with the areas of disagreement between the parties, which we're going to be discussing. But it might include areas that are agreeable as well. But what I'd like to do is first, it's really Mr. Mayett as to the council's main concerns now, having had regard to what's been agreed or on these sports pitches. If you can just outline your concerns, and then we can deal with those perhaps individually in each part. But I'll just hand over to Mr. Mayett just to explain the full basis after all the other bits have agreed. So Mr. Mayett, in terms of the things that have been agreed, you're actually, as a council, agreeing that there is this need for the amount of playing pitches and sports facilities that are being provided. Is that the case? That you're happy with the provision of the amount that's being provided? Is that?
Thank you, sir. Yes, and excuse me. And just before we begin, thank you to everybody for flexibility around the fact that I'm on leave next week, which is, appreciated. So I do apologise for that, but it was booked some time ago. Yes, sir, you are correct. The Borough Council's playing pitch strategy does reference the need for pitches for the Tenterden area, particularly for the two named clubs, which are Tenterden Tigers and Tenterden Town Football Club. And the number and style of pitches that are being proposed would meet the needs as described in the playing pitch strategy. And as described in the sports statement of common ground, the majority of issue that we have is around the future governance, the lack of detail that we believe we've not received, or lack of detail that we've received regarding the future governance, ownership, management, maintenance and operation of those facilities, and who exactly will be using them. That's important to us because what we want to do is to make sure that when facilities are built, they are actually used. They do meet the needs of the local community and are going to be used and available to them, which is why within the local plan, leading up to the policy IMP4, page 314 of the local plan, there's text.
Can I just have a, yeah, I'll just get that up. So looking at the adopted layout, page
314.
314.
If I can find that too.
Go right down the bottom, if I can get, take a bit of 314. Having a problem getting through to 314. It's right a long way down the screen.
Quite close to the end.
Yes, I know. Yeah. 314. I'm just about there. Yes, I've got the 314. Yeah.
So on page 314, we have section 11.16, which runs down to section 11.27, which builds up the case for IMP4, which is around making sure that appropriate governance arrangements are in place for proposed facilities, that they do not fall back onto the borough council and are predominantly community-led and operated wherever sort of possible and practical. Also within the borough council's playing pitch strategy, which I'm not sure if you have that one open as well.
Yes, I have got the playing pitch strategy.
This is very close to the beginning, page 4, paragraph 3, which you have that.
Page 4, paragraph 1. Sorry, page 4, paragraph
3. Bullet point number 3, perhaps under football strategic priorities.
Hang on, have I got the right one? I've got playing pitch strategy 2017.
Correct.
Right. I've now got executive summary with page 1. And then I've got paragraphs of 1.13, etc.
I believe there's some odd numbering with this document, which I apologise for. It seems to start again with, if you have the executive summary.
I've got the executive summary, yes.
Scroll down from that page another couple of pages, sir.
Yeah, I've got, yes.
And we come to football strategic priorities.
I've got population growth and PPS headline findings. Football headlines. I've got. This is the right document I'm looking at, isn't it?
I believe so. So yes.
So I'll keep going. I mean, I'm on page 8 now, and
right.
Then I've got
There's a section fairly close to the top of the document that's called Football Strategic Priorities.
Page 4 of the document.
Yeah, I went to page 4. I don't understand why my document doesn't seem to be the same as anything that you're identifying, because it doesn't sound, I mean, this is definitely the document. I've got page 4 on I might have to go to the hard copy one, because I can't see that this makes any sense as to what you're saying. It doesn't seem to have any heading or anything. It's got, I mean, it says it's got table 2 on this page. Is that right?
No.
Well, I don't understand why my page 4 is completely different from what you've got. And it says it's the playing pitch strategy. So playing pitch strategy 2017 to 2030, August 2017, draft version 6. That's what it says. and it's got. It's not in a summary, or it's not in an appendix or anything.
Sorry, so did you say 2006?
Well, that's the,
No,
sorry, no.
You said August 2017, didn't you?
Yeah, August 2017.
My apologies.
But can I just say there might be a confusion, because in mine there's the draft May document, which is CD 2.21. Is that what you're looking at, Mr. Mark? Because your references are right for me.
Yeah, yes, it is. It's dated May 2017.
CD2.
That's the problem, sir. I think you've got what I.
Well, I've got another playing pitch strategy, right?
Yeah, but yours is. I think Mr. Mark will confirm this. Yours is the adopted one. Is the May one the draft? But you were referring to the May one, Mr. Mark.
Yes, I was referring. Sorry.
This is the May one, is it? Yes.
I was referring to the document that's on the council's website.
Right, yeah. This is a completely different document I think, but I'll just go and have a look. Yes, it's a completely different document from the other one, which are both playing pitch strategies. So I've got two. Yeah, so I have got your one now, but it's very confusing. There seems to be two playing pitch strategy documents, August 2017, and this one is the May 2017, which I'm surprised is why hasn't it been overtaken by the
yes,
August?
I can't remember which month it was adopted, but the final version was adopted by the council, having been through the cabinet.
Well, this one's August 2017 draft version was the one I've been looking at.
Right.
And then you are looking at the May one, which is, I would assume, that's a draft Ashford Borough Council Borough playing pitch strategy. But wouldn't the August one be more up to date than the May one?
Yes, it should. And I believe the wording that I'm going to quote from the one that I hope we're both now looking at remains the same through both versions.
Well, it doesn't seem to be anything the same, but it doesn't seem much similarity between them at all from what I can see. But anyway.
Isn't it sensible that we look at the final adopted version, because that is the council's playing pitch strategy? I mean, is it possible maybe for you, Mr. Mark, just to send it to the programme officer? Because that is what should be, should it not? 220 whatever it is, 2.21. Don't we want the final one rather than the draft one? Because it sounds like there were three iterations: draft in May, draft in August, and adopted in October.
Yes, I need the October one really, because the August one seems to be quite a lot different from well, certainly the layout of that one seems to be completely different from the May one. So I think we've got to look at an adopted version, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Which, because I mean, especially as there seems to be massive changes between them.
Yeah. Well, I'm told by Mr. Grady, if you search on the ABC website, it's the May one that comes up. So maybe we just need 5 minutes for Mr. Mark to find the October final one and ask the programme officer to circulate it to us all. And that's what 2.21 should become.
I think we do need the final one, but the May one comes up as on the website, does it? But I've also been given the August one. So that is down as one of the documents as well before me. So I have got a bit of confusion there as to which strategy we're looking at. But anyway, can we continue until I don't want to? I know we've got time is at a limit. So can we just ignore that strategy at the moment and just, well, or at least take what you're saying from the strategy? And I don't know where it is in the. I'm assuming it's in the adopted strategy, but anyway.
Yes.
Well, sir, could I completely agree? Could we just ask someone from the council's listing, as they have access, to just circulate to the programme officer the October one, so we can return to it a bit later?
Yeah, I think we've got to, because I can't spend any longer on this particular matter of what strategy we're looking at and which version. But anyway, if you can continue, then you've referred to the play pitch strategy.
Yes. Thank you, sir. I mean, the point I wanted to make is that in the version that I have in front of me at the moment, which I appreciate needs to be clarified, it speaks about there's a need to support junior clubs to develop with the management and improvement of facilities and ensure security of tenure of playing pitches for junior clubs, either through leasing or community asset transfers, so clubs can become sustainable in the future. So that's part of the grounding and the background to what the Borough Council is trying to achieve, working with clubs and communities, allied to the words described in the local plan, which is around the need for appropriate governance arrangements to be presented for the council to approve. And it's those arrangements that we're not comfortable with yet as being presented in sufficient detail to be able to fully understand who is going to own, operate, use, facilitate and maintain those facilities. And within that, where the two main clubs within Tenterden that are cited in the playing pitch strategy and in the Tenterden Town local plan, where they will fit within the proposed facilities. That's the sort of the crux of the problem that we have at the moment, sir.
Yeah, I can see that, and that's how I've really got the headings. But I mean, what would you expect to be provided that hasn't been provided?
The level of detail that we're looking for is who will actually be the owner of the site, and then if that's a different organisation that then maintains it and operates it, who those bodies will be and under what terms those arrangements will be between the parties. And if the clubs are to be anchor tenants within the facility or hirers of the facility, under what terms those clubs will be engaging within those facilities, pricing structures, opening hours, operating services, etc., so that we can see whether those clubs are going to have or be able to have some judgment as to whether those clubs are going to be able to afford to use those facilities, want to use those facilities, and will actually be able to benefit and enjoy from those facilities. What we do have is a description of what will be built or proposed to be built if approved. What we don't have is a clear understanding of how those facilities would operate, function, and how the community would engage and benefit from them.
Right, thank you. That seems to be a good summary of your concerns. So who on the appellant's side has got a response to that? Who's the best person to respond? Mr. Grady.
I think me to start with, sir. Mr. Morgan may have some comments regarding the Section 106 agreement and some of the more detailed matters. I think I'd just like to start, if I may, with the matter of involvement of the specific clubs. And there are two things I would like to draw your attention to. The first of which is the minutes of the sports review, which took place a few weeks ago.
This is the one that's just been given, the 19th of January.
Indeed, yeah. I believe Mr. Mayor is a member of the sports review, according to Tenterden Town Council website. He is. And I want to draw your attention to that. We have, as stated in my proofs and in my supporting sector planning application, made attempts to engage with the football clubs. And it was through them that we developed the range, through the information that they gave us. It was through them that we developed the range of pitch facilities and the pavilion building proposals based on the club's own designs, which were produced in 2015, given to us in 2017, and clearly informed the neighbourhood plan proposals produced in 2021. So there has been some discussion and involvement with the clubs. However, since about 2017, we have had some consultation with those clubs. But I think it's important to draw your attention to a paragraph in item 14 of the minutes, which says the subcommittee, being the sports review, agreed to wait until a decision has been made on the Waits appeal for planning permission on the Appledore Road land before inquiring about pitches on the site.
Sorry, can you? Sorry, where does it say that? Sorry, again.
Paragraph 14 of the minutes
14,
of the meeting.
yes. Sorry, I missed that. Yeah. Paragraph 14 of this notes of the meeting.
Yeah. Meeting 19th of January 2022.
Yes, I've got that. Yeah, paragraph 14, matters arising, it says.
Yeah, it's underneath there. It's the fourth paragraph under that.
Right,
item.
sorry, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then connected with that is an email which I believe you've received from Graham Smith, who is a football club representative on the committee, on the review. You have that to hand, sir?
So an email, when was that sent in?
Mr. White may be able to advise me on the reference for that. It was, I don't have the core document reference available for that.
Oh, it's a core document reference, is it? Right.
I believe so, yeah. But it's CD 6.25.
CD 6.25, just a minute, I'll get that up. CD 6.25.
Yes.
Right. Yes, sorry, I've got that. Yes. Right. Yes. I'm looking at the email. It's a string of emails, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and it is the second email from Mr. Smith. So it's the one that was sent to me on the 13th of January this year at 10 minutes past 2 in the afternoon.
Yeah, yes, I've got that now. Yes.
Okay, so in its second paragraph, he says, it is unquestionable that there is a need for additional grass pitches in Tenterden. The lack of good quality grass pitches has been a cause of much consternation and concern throughout the town for over 20 years. He then goes on to talk about the junior club playing outside of the town. Now it says this need has not been resolved by the town council or the borough council. It is clear, in my view, that there is an interest in engaging with Waits once planning permission is received, or if and when planning permission is received. And it is also clear that the club's representatives are happy with the proposals because they are the same as their own proposals, and that they would use the site. So I wanted to deal with that part of Mr. Mayor's comments firstly. I think he's got his hand up.
Right. I mean, what I'd like to do though is, Mr. Mayor, have you got something to say? Because you've said what you said before, and I wanted just a response on what you'd said. But certainly, if there's something you don't agree with, you can say now, Mr. Mayor. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. No, my question was just going to be regarding Mr. Smith from the football club, and just understanding if he is an actual elected member, representative of the club, secretary, or whatever his position may be, or whether he is a member of the club. Is his representation that of the club, or is it a view from a member within the club? I'm just trying to understand that, sir.
I understand that. His view is that as a representative of the football clubs on the Tenterden Sports Review, he is a former chairman of the Junior Football Club, and he is a current member of the Sports Review.
So, sorry, on this, in this committee meeting, present on the committee, they've got a number of footballers.
Yep.
And Mr. Smith seems to be one of the footballers. Is that right?
He's not a footballer himself, I believe, but he is a representative.
He just said he's a footballer.
Yeah, that's the term.
He's on this committee meeting, isn't he? He's on. Yeah, he's down at Mr. G. Smith,
along with Mr. Saunders as well.
So he's actually present at that meeting. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay then. Thank you.
And yeah, in terms of the point of a governance strategy, we agree that there needs to be a governance strategy for the pitches going forward, and that needs to cover not just the management, maintenance, operation. It also needs to cover the design and specification, and I believe we're in agreement on the design specification matters. However, IMP4 does not say that we need to provide the council with the level of detail it is requiring from us at this point in time. But through the discussions and negotiations that we've had to do with the Section 106 agreement, we have actually reached a lot of agreement, broad agreement, moving on even from our statement of common ground around the general framework for the appointment of an operator and around the general principle of how the facilities will be owned going forward. There is a good basis, I think, here for us to suggest, or strongly suggest, that we are in accordance with IMP4 and that we are working towards putting in place a community steward. I think it's quite important here to point out that community stewardship is not clearly defined in policy IMP4. It doesn't seem to have been put in place anywhere else in Ashford. And we have reached out to the council to try and put in place a process that we think is appropriate. And we have based it on community asset transfer policies that are used by Sport England, the Football Association and other organisations. So going back to Mr. Mayott's earlier point about the strategic priorities of the playing pitch strategy, and I'm familiar with the May version, I'm happy to talk about that, to enable clubs to take on facilities. And we think that is a really important opportunity that this project offers, and will be supported through the community maintenance sums, supported through the delivery of a facility that has a design and specification that is entirely in accordance with Sport England and Institute of Groundmanship guidance.
Can I ask, in your proposal then, who would actually own the sports pitches and pavilion?
Well, the ultimate owner is likely to be the estate management body, with an organisation leasing the facilities from the estate management body. However, there is the potential for the owner and operator to be one and the same organisation. There is another quite interesting and important matter, I think, in the minutes of the sports review, and it relates back to Councillor Mike Carter's email to me regarding which is included in my proofs, about setting up an organisation to manage the facilities. At the last meeting of the sports review, it was actually discussed that the Tenterden Leisure Centre Charitable Trust may be an appropriate organisation to manage these facilities for the community. And that organisation could, under the proposals that are envisaged, would take a lease from the estate management organisation and be responsible for the operation of those facilities.
Right. So in terms of the, I can see where there's a bit of concern. In terms of these facilities, though, you've got the estate management, which hasn't been established who's going to take on the estate management, has it?
No, but that, and forgive me here, I would not expect that the wider estate management company arrangements. Mr. Morgan's got his hand up. He can answer this question better than me.
So I think I can be heard but not seen. If Ms. Williams could please make that possible. I'm happy to be not seen and heard, but I just want to address the points that Richard has led me on to.
Yeah, I'm aware that Councillor John Crawford has got his hand up, but I prefer not. Have you, Mr. Crawford, have you got something that you can give me more information on? I prefer not to take questions from other people at this stage.
I'd just like to make points. I'd like to make points of clarification, and that is that Mr. Grady, who's representing the appellant, if we did get a letter from Councillor Mike Carter, All I'd like to say that he wasn't talking on behalf of the council, he would be talking in a personal capacity. So I'd just like to make that clear.
Oh, Tenterden Town Council, yes.
Yep.
On those minutes, you're just saying.
Yeah, that's right, because at the moment I'm the only one from the Tenterden Town Council present, so I felt that I should actually clarify where permission is given and when.
But there was someone from, there were two people, according to that, from Tenterden Town Council, aren't there?
Yes, it's myself and Councillor Knowles, but unfortunately he can't make it today. No,
I mean on this, are you saying about Mr. Carter on this minutes of the meeting? Is that what you're saying?
Richard Grady said that Councillor Mike Carter wrote to him about.
Oh right, sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, about the setting up of the organisation. The point I'm making is, Mike Carter, if he did write a letter, he wasn't doing it as a councillor, he would have been doing this as a private capacity because he didn't request the council to give him permission to do that.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So I don't want to go too much off beam on this, but can I, yeah, right, thanks Mr. Councillor Crawford, if you could put your hand down now and I'll... Mr. Grady, have you got something to say?
Just on Councillor Crawford's comment, he's right, and we've stated in my proofs that Councillor Carter was writing in a personal capacity. So, yep, he is entirely correct to say that. The point I was making, though, was that following discussion at the sports review meeting, it was suggested by the chair of the Leisure Centre Charitable Trust that the charitable trust may be an appropriate organisation to, and an existing charitable trust may be an appropriate organisation to manage the facilities rather than establishing a new community interest company.
Right, thank you. And so Mr. Morgan now is going to say something. I mean, I did hear from him. So yes, and I can see you now as well. So
thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Just to pick up on some very important points that Mr. Myatt really opened with as concerns of the authority, which he expressed as concerns which haven't immediately been addressed, but there is almost a 100% degree of crossover between the concerns that were listed by Mr. Myatt and what is the council's own devised mechanism, specifically in relation to the sports facilities, for covering off all of those points of management, maintenance, governance, operation, ownership, a community use agreement, terms of use, opening hours, hire fees, and the appointment of the operator by reference to an approved set of qualitative criteria. That's not an exhaustive list, so I appreciate you taking a note, but all of those things are actually set out as a control mechanism, as a matter of development management in the Section 106 agreement, in accordance with the Borough Council's own drafting in the Section 106. And what I am pleased to confirm is that in terms of the fundamental structure of that, the appellant is entirely on board with the structure and the level, type of information that's required, because it is in line with a version of a proposed mechanism that was volunteered by the appellant previously. We have no issue at all with the things that the council is asking to be controlled under the Section 106, nor how.
Right, thank you, Mr. Morgan. Anything else you'd like to say before I've got Carissa Humphreys, who'd like to say something, I think.
No, sir, it's very apt that it's Ms. Humphreys who speaks next.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Humphreys. If you'd like to say something. I mean, you're the equivalent on the council side, i.e. you're the solicitor, are you, on the council side, and Mr. Morgan's the solicitor acting on behalf of the appellant. Is that the case?
That's correct, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you. What Mr. Morgan has said so far is, seems to be correct. He sent me Section 106 back yesterday with some relatively minor amendments made to the governance provisions within the Section 106 that we sent. I would only point out that the appellant is reserving their position on triggers at the moment, so it would be helpful to know where they stand with that, really, to see what level of agreement we have, considering that the timing of the delivery is possibly a point of contention here, in order to, make sure that we are agreed on that, and that the council's worries to do with when this will be delivered, will it be delivered appropriately, etc.
So when you say the timing, when you say the timing of the triggers for delivery, what triggers are the concerns that you have? The triggers for what? The triggers for the provision of it, the triggers for the management of it, or the triggers for establishing the ownership or whatever? What triggers are you concerned about?
Well, all of those, really. I just wanted to, just because it was broadly said, and I'm sure Mr. Morgan will, maybe he doesn't have the exact instructions yet on that, but I'm not sure when he said he was reserving the triggers, whether that was meant some further amendments might be made in the 106, or whether it was just to do with some of the gaps I've put in, and with submitting the scheme, for example, or I just need further clarification on what exactly they're hoping to confirm later or not.
So can I just say that, so some of these matters are able to be dealt with under a Section 106, and we're going to be discussing the Section 106 when I got a better idea of what version we're going to be looking at. That will be later on. So some of these might be able to be left to the Section 106, but having said that, I do want to make sure that we don't get to the stage when we get to the discussion on the Section 106 and these sports facilities concerns haven't been dealt with. So that's the main reason for this, is to actually look at what concerns there are and whether they can be overcome by the Section 106. And then it's a matter of the detail in the Section 106 being finalised a bit later on. But I've got, my programme officer has just put her hand up, so I'm assuming that's quite urgent. So what's the concern?
Thank you very much, sir. Just a very quick reminder, ladies and gentlemen, can you please mute yourselves if you're not speaking? There's quite a lot of feedback coming back over the session. So if you're not speaking, can you just please mute? Thank you very much, sir.
Right. I must admit, I haven't heard that much feedback, but maybe the other people have had that problem. Thank you for pointing that out. What I'd like to do next is I'll hand over to Mr. Morgan first, just to say what he'd like to say, and then Mr. Mayet's got his hand up, which I think he'd like to say some other things on it. But for Mr. Morgan first.
Thank you, sir. Specifically on 106 in relation to triggers, Ms. Humphreys is right that the appellant wanted to take away and come back comprehensively with its proposals, or an ability to demonstrate that there's a strong measure of agreement across the triggers in the 106 as a whole on sports facilities in particular, in relation to what are the information and submission requirements to deal with all those things that were mentioned by Mr. Myatt as concerns. The appellant has no issue in terms of the how early it is that the council would wish to see those things submitted and have approval of them relative to the scheme. The only critical trigger in relation to sports facilities is issue of their physical delivery in accordance with the approved specification, and that they have become available for use. And within that consideration is the bedding in period of sports pitches delivered to Sport England standard. And Mr. Grady's best placed to talk about what that period is, but that is a consideration. So it is that delivery, sir, and they're to be available for use relative to, for a 106 obligation, the council would wish to see imposed on the outline part of the application, say the housing development, and it's the council's opening position at least that no commencement of development on the outline / residential part of the should occur until the sports facilities have been delivered and have become available to be ready for use. That's the point that my client has had to take away, but perhaps the best person to follow me, sir, would be Mr. Grady to speak to Sport England's own position on what a suitable trigger for their delivery relative to the housing scheme might be.
Yeah, I miss Mr. Mayert's got has his hand up for quite a long time, so I'll go back to Mr. Mayert before Mr. Grady, and then just see what Mr. Mayert had to say on what's been said so far. Mr. Mayert, you had your hand up for quite a long time. Well, not electronically up, yes. not physically, but yes.
That's fine, thank you. It may be easier if Mr. Grady does speak now, perhaps, because that follows the train from the previous speaker.
Right, okay, then I just wondered whether you had something you urgently wanted to say.
Thank you.
Right, so I'll hand over to Mr. Grady then. Thank you, Mr. Grady.
Just to do with the trigger point, the proposal is, well, I'll take you out to a slightly more technical point. It is better to commence construction of a playing field in the spring, put simply. And we have based the programme on an assumption that construction of the playing fields would start in the spring of 2023. The construction period for a playing field is relatively short. It's 3 to 4 months. However, you can't use them for about 12 months. And that takes us through to the autumn of 2024. Construction, access, and so on needs to go through the site of the existing playing field. There's, as we are aware, that is how the site will be accessed, and that needs to be in place before we can construct anything. If the pitch construction is completed in the late summer of 2023, and the pitch will not be available for use until the autumn of 2024, there is a period of almost 18 months under the council's proposals where the client can do no construction. Now, in the core document that accompanies which is Sport England's comments, the statutory consultee, which I think is 4.6, they indicate that they are happy with the proposed trigger arrangements in broad principle, and they are happy that as there is no current use of the pitch, there is no need for the new pitch to be re-provided in advance of any other development being undertaken on the site. So put simply, the proposals are acceptable to the statutory consultee. No sports users are harmed because the pitch is not used. It hasn't been used or maintained for a number of years. The site's owner, the school, hasn't used it for a decade. By not allowing construction of any housing, it makes it quite difficult for the other aspects of the project to be brought forward.
Right. Thank you. I've got a tapping noise in the background. I don't know where that's from, but yeah,
not me. Sir.
That sounds as though someone was typing something while it's going on, but I don't know what was happening there. But anyway, yeah, thank you for that. And so, Mr. Mayert, have you got anything to say now you've heard from Mr. Grady?
Thank you. Just a couple of points, if I can, just returning back to the question of who may own, operate and manage these facilities, which I think, as Mr. Grady said, it's likely to be a particular body. So we still don't know who the owners and operators will be. We've heard it could be Tenterden Leisure Trust, an organisation I am aware of, but there's still no certainty over that. So our concern still remains that we do not know who will actually be the owners, managers and operators of these facilities. Whether that's right to continue those discussions through the 106 process, I'm not quite sure, but it just causes us concern that we still don't know who it's going to be. And part of the reason for that concern is sort of returning back to the one of the appellant's documents, which was the statement of community involvement. I can find the number for that, which related to, which I believe is CD 41. No, it's not correct, is it? I do apologise.
Statement of I don't know whether anyone can help me with the statement. Yeah, so in the application documents, is it one something?
I had the number in front of me just now.
Statement is 124.
124, sir.
Thank you. In that document, on page 60, there's a pie chart that shows, following public consultation that the appellant undertook, 15% of the people that attended that community consultation day said they supported the proposal for 5 new pitches. That's not massive ringing support for a facility of this type. And understanding that the 2 clubs that we've mentioned before are deemed to be desperate for community facilities, it still leaves a concern in our mind as to just how much the facilities would be used should they be built. When we have this sort of statement that says only 15% of people are supporting it from those that attended the consultation, and we have had letters via the appellant explaining that the school, Homewood School, would not use the facility, and another letter from another local club who confirmed they wouldn't use the facility. What we still don't have is absolute certainty and confirmation as to who will use the facility. And that is a point that is of concern to us. So while points around timing can be addressed, and I do agree with Mr. Grady's sort of timetable for construction, that seems appropriate and sort of right and proper. There's still concern for us as to who the owners, managers and users will be and under what terms that will be. We've heard lots of possibilities, but we haven't heard any detail on definites.
Yeah, I mean, what you are saying though, Mr. Mayor, that you're satisfied that this is needed, these facilities. You're not saying that these facilities aren't needed, because you said you were happy that these were. You're not saying that these facilities aren't necessary part of the development.
The number of pitches and the changing facilities that are being proposed will meet the requirements of the Borough Council's playing pitch strategy. Yes, I'll say requirements, the ambitions of that strategy. So it's understood there's a shortfall of facilities and there are clubs that require them. We can see that the numbers being proposed would go some way to meeting those requirements and would meet them. What we're not clear of though, because it's not just about the buildings and the pitches themselves, for clubs it's hugely important they can afford to use them, they have appropriate access to them, i.e. at times when they want to use them, etc. So it's those governance arrangements that are still the concern for us.
Yeah, and have you in the past dealt with similar facilities being provided?
The short answer is no. We haven't within the borough had any pitches of this scale constructed since I've been working at Ashford since 2016, and I've not had any new football pitches of this scale provided in this fashion, so it's difficult to make recent comparisons within this authority.
Yeah. So you wouldn't, I mean, you're saying you'd like some more certainty over this, but how can that be provided at this stage? What would you expect?
A clear description from the appellant as to who the owner will be, not likely to be or could be, but who will own it, who will operate it and manage it, and who will be the embedded users of that facility. A proper letter of support from either or both of the clubs that are willing to engage with using the facility. and heads of terms for any lease arrangements between owners and subtenants would give us more certainty and clarity over who, and to be clear that they will be able to afford and be able to use those facilities.
Yeah, and you haven't got any of that?
There is the email, as was referenced, from Mr. Smith, who I'm still not entirely convinced he's actually a member of the club committee at the moment. I understood he'd stood down. I do understand he has the club at his heart, but I'm not sure he's actually a member of the club committee at the moment. So,
yeah, so you don't know whether there's anything official then from the club?
Correct, correct.
Right. So really and that's as far as you've seen really on these issues you're concerned about. Is there anything else that's been provided?
Not that I can recall, sir, no.
No. So really you're concerned at the moment about that. And this is really the main reason for refusal, is it? This is the basis of the reason for refusal.
How it works within the council is that I work in the council's culture team. We are asked to provide comments on planning applications when they come in. Those are the kinds of comments we've made back to our colleagues in planning. That has become the council's reason for refusal.
Yeah, so it's Mr. Davis who's put it forward as a reason for refusal, and that's been accepted by the council's committee as being a valid reason for refusal. But that is probably based on what you've said, I assume.
Yes.
Or has Mr. Davis, because Mr. Davis isn't actually taking part unless he wants to in this particular discussion. But anyway, but thank you for putting that forward. And I don't know who wants to go first. There's two people from the appellant. There's Mr. Morgan and Mr. Grady. I don't know who takes precedent.
Other than to say me, I don't know. I just want to come back and reinforce perhaps what may have become a little bit murky in the last 10 minutes, which is that the council has itself put forward the development control mechanism to deal with the early resolution of all of the concerns and lack of specificity about Mr. Myatt is talking, and it is its own design, and fundamentally the appellant agrees with it, subscribes with it, and can also subscribe to how early relative to the scheme it is able to submit and seek approval of all of that information. And that mechanism put forward by the council, we would say, is in keeping with what policy IMP4 describes as the stewardship strategy. It is a strategy described by that policy as the means by which the authority is able to satisfy itself that the arrangements for governance be put in place for the relevant facilities will be carried out and will be sustainable. So we can subscribe with the council's own solution to what Mr. Myatt's describing.
Yeah, I don't know whether Carissa Humphreys can say anything on that. Yes. Are you happy with? I mean, having heard from Mr. Mayor, I know you're not dealing with that part, but you're here to represent the council's position, Ms. Humphreys. Are you available?
Yes, thank you, sir.
Yeah, and in terms of that, Mr. Morgan says all of these concerns from Mr. Mayor can be addressed in the mechanism that the council's agreed to or put forward under the Section 106. Is that right?
Well, the Section 106 tries to deal with, as far as possible, the concerns. I think, unless I misunderstood Mr. Grady, perhaps we don't have complete agreement on the timescales, though, because we have asked for these everything to do with the full application to be dealt with before the commencement on the outline application. Of course, we do have...
Sorry to interrupt, but forgetting about the timescales, because I know that that's still got to be dealt with, and that can be dealt with when we discuss the Section 106. But in terms of what would be put into the Section 106, which you've progressed a fair amount, I think, are you satisfied that this could feasibly deal with all of these points? who's going to operate and manage the facilities, who will use the facilities, who will support what. Well, I know that Mr. Mayor hasn't got a letter from support of them, and the heads of terms from users and subtenants. Have you got any of that?
Well, I've had to draft the 106 quite broadly because we don't have an identified operator at this stage. So there is a 106 that was completed recently by a colleague of mine at the end of January, which had an identified operator on a Conningbrook site, and that was quite a bit easier. The land was transferred to an identified operator, and we can't do that in this
operator
case.
And that was owner as well, was it? Operator and owner.
Yes.
So that was the estate management and operator and owner all in one, was it?
I think so. I have to.
No, it doesn't matter. But I think it. Yeah, but you'd actually got someone identified on that section 106 as actually taking those responsibilities.
And it was, and it was an Ashford Bowls Club, which, as I understand, has been in existence for, I don't know, a century, I think, or maybe less. So, it has a track record of being able to maintain itself and pay for itself. So that was a lot easier to deal with. And here we have, the issue with, in the borough of Ashford, unfortunately, there's a lot of management companies that do fail. And even with, funding for 10 years, we do have something called the 11th year problem, which is, we're only allowed to ask for 10 years maintenance, but it could well be that these fail after, the money runs out. So, I have tried to be helpful here and draft something within the confines we have, really, for what we can ask. But yeah, so yes, we did put this drafting forward so that it does have a lot of the detail required, but unfortunately, with the constraints we have, there will still be some risks involved.
Yeah. And
sorry, apologies, sir.
Can I just ask first, if there is a problem with finding a management company, what would happen? Or management ownership?
Unfortunately, there would be heavy political pressure on the council to take this on, so that it's not left, to ruin for the residents. But Ashford does not want to take this on. It's a financial burden, unfortunately.
Right. Okay, thank you. And that's one of the concerns, is it, that it might be left to the council because there wouldn't be a suitable management company to be able to take it on. Right. Can I just go to Mr. Mayor just to clarify that first before I move on to the appellant? Yeah.
Thank you for letting me jump in, sir. There are 2 points to that. What would be our concern if that were to be the case, that there was a failure? One, the local community wouldn't be benefiting from the sports facilities in some way, that they would be disadvantaged because the facilities weren't available, whoever was operating them was not functioning. So that would be our first concern. And yes, within the local plan, in the sort of the preamble to IMP4, it talks about that very situation being the one that we want to avoid, that we don't want to end up in a position where the borough council, because of pressures on our finances, bearing in mind the local plan was written and agreed in 2017, which was long before the COVID pandemic hit, which has affected every local authority's finances sort of negatively. We're in a worse financial position than we were at that point. We wouldn't want to be in a position where it was forced upon us to have to take on, unless it really was the only option. So yes, they would be the 2 points that we'd be trying to avoid. Right.
So I've got both Mr. Grady and Mr. Morgan with their hands up. Who takes precedent again?
I think Mr. Morgan, because he's responding to a point made by Ms. Humphries.
Yeah. So, Mr. Morgan.
Logical to me, sir.
Thank you, sir. Again, I think there's a risk of losing sight of how effective what the council has asked for through this 106 mechanism, which is how earlier I mentioned before that everything to do with the who, what, how it works as an information piece is something which the appellant is content to seek the approval of as early as the council have asked for it. We're not talking about the delivery piece there. So that is a pre-commencement restriction. And so insofar as...
So can I just ask then, so in terms of the pre-commencement restriction, are you saying that this won't be able to commence, the development won't be able to commence until these are in place? Is that what you're saying?
So that's the delivery trigger. This is about the council's approval of everything that falls under the word governance and what is meant by the stewardship strategy in IMP4. So insofar as IMP4's stewardship strategy is what the 106 describes as required to be submitted and approved by the local authority, that is offered and secured for approval prior to commencement of development on the outline as an exercise in the submission of information relating to management, ownership, governance, maintenance, selection and operator if it itself and saying.
Yes. But isn't that's not quite the same as, because that means you could still commence the full planning permission for which is the sports fields and pavilion, couldn't you, before these are in place? Is that the case?
Well, we are working with what the council has asked for to serve as the planning obligation.
But you're saying, but isn't the council's concern that these aren't in place? You haven't got a management company or ownership or even users established, and they're not in place, but you could still, if I granted permission, you could start the work on these pavilion and football pitches and even complete them, albeit that, I mean, I don't know whether you would, but albeit that the outline couldn't start without any management in place or ownership in place. Is that the case under the present?
The version of the ownership and management, I mean, there is a distinction there between ownership, management and maintenance of a facility, which is the pavilion, the pitches and the car park, as distinct from the operator who would then be breathing life into them in terms of delivering the benefits.
Yes.
Absolutely a mechanism from the outset whereby the management, ownership and maintenance can be dealt with, because that's within the gift of the developer in order to make sure that there is a company created to serve as that vehicle. But what we, with an eye to the most appropriate way of delivering the benefits, have asked the council to agree, which seems to be completely in tune with the example of the Conningbrook scheme, which Ms. Humphries referred to, is the ability for the 106 to recognise that the management company, for want of a better phrase, could be self and same as the operator, because taking the example of, in our situation, only hypothetically, the Tenterden Tigers. The Tenterden Tigers is itself an incorporated company limited by shares with memorandum and articles which completely empower it to acquire, dispose, let, lease, manage, maintain and use sports facilities. It has all of that within its purpose. So, but that's just hypothetical, I should say, sir. But what that does indicate is the ability of an existing entity to serve as all of those things. But of course, that's it. That's exactly, the fitness for purpose of the entity is entirely to do with complying with the Borough Council's planning obligation to submit to it how you've gone about qualitatively selecting the entity which is best suited to the outcome. So there are a range of options of who could own the facility and manage it, as distinct from the operator. But what we do want is to be recognised that the best solution would be a single entity.
Right, thank you, Mr. Morgan. I'll hand over to Mr. Grady, and I think we might end up going around in circles a bit here, because I can see where we've got to with the appellant's proposal. We're looking at both the council and the appellant are looking at a section 106 to see how these can be tied up. But I think we all know what position we're at now at present. And it seems to me that the council aren't happy with the position that we're at present at, but the appellant's views are that there's a way around it, really. And so I'm not sure how much further I can explore this in this roundtable session. But Mr. Grady did have his hand up. And Mr. Mayer's got his hand up, but I was going to, Mr. Grady, did you want to say something, or
I took it down when you said we'll go to Mr. Grady. That's in my head it's still up, but yeah.
Right. So I'll just see what Mr. Mayer's got to say, and then I think we're not going to get much further really on this. Right, Mr. Mayer, Mr. Grady, you've got your hand up again. I don't know. Yeah.
I wasn't sure, sir, if you wanted me to put it back up, so that's why I put it up.
Oh, okay. But you don't want to say anything now?
No, I do. I would like to say something, yes.
Oh, right. Sorry. No, that's why I handed to
you. Okay. Sorry, we're at cross purposes. I just want to go back to a couple of Mr. Mayer's points around demand and whether organisations will actually use the facilities. And the point he raises about the table in the statement of community engagement is an interesting one. 15, if you extrapolate that to the population of Tenterden, 15% of the population of Tenterden is over 1,000 people. That is more than the membership and the playing membership of the clubs in Tenterden. That clearly suggests to me that there is enough demand from people who are interested in football to want to use these pitches. I think it's also very important to say that there is what could be perceived as some local pressure to not engage with Waits and their representatives in the development of this project. And I think that is best evidenced, I'll draw your attention to it again, in the minutes of the Sports Review from January 2022, where it says the subcommittee agreed to wait until a decision has been made on the Waits appeal for planning permission on the Appledore Road land before inquiring about pitches on the site. So we want to engage with them. They want to engage with us. In fact, they even sought permission, we believe, based on the minutes from last year, which are included in the appendices to my supporting statement. They sought permission from the Borough Council to engage with us last year. We don't know how that was communicated to the Borough Council, and I think the Borough Council view was that the Sports Review didn't need their permission. However, they have sought to engage with us. I would also like go back to Mr. Myatt's point about the fact that nobody in Ashford has attempted to deliver any sports pitches of this size or scale on site in the previous 5 or 6 years. And a lot of that has been dealt with through off-site contributions. Tent 1A did that, and a lot of that money went towards the Homewood School artificial grass pitch. I have got experience of that. I've got current ongoing experience of that on a project in Herne Bay, Canterbury City Council project, 450 home development, a very similar scale of sports pitch provision, slightly smaller, but with a multi-use games area as well. So an all-weather facility, sorry, not an all-weather, an artificial surfaced facility. All of that was dealt with in outline, including the design and specification of the building and the pitches. We are much further along than that project. And the appointment of the operator is not required until the 350th unit on that development is delivered. That development is much larger scale than this facility, than this development. We have in place a very detailed set of proposals for maintenance, design and specification for the pitches. We have sporting support for the time frame for the delivery of the pitches, because nobody is harmed through the proposed timescale for the delivery of the pitches. And we have in place a framework and the broad principles within the Section 106 agreement about how that operator will be selected. I would suggest that the approach that we have adopted is sensible and proportionate and compares well to a similar scheme in Kent.
Right, thank you, Mr. Grady. Is there anything else you'd like to say? And I don't want to explore this much further, but Mr. Mayett, have you got some more comments?
Thank you. I think there's 4 things I wanted to say, 3 of which just in response to Mr. Grady there. The first one is he makes the comment about the percentage of population. That seems to be an assumption based on, I think Tenterden's got a population of around about 8,000 people, of how many people would support if that 15% of the 235 that attended also supported. I think the fact is only 235, or 235 is the number of people that attended that consultation. So we can only form an opinion based on the facts of those people that responded on that particular session. There was a comment about the Tenterden Sports Committee, whether they needed the Borough Council's permission to engage with weights and the development, and no, they do not need our permission, and we did make that clear to them. I've heard of the Herne Bay development and understand a little bit about it just from sort of brief research on the internet. What I don't know is if that has the same local community groups, interests, assets, whatever it may be described as is prevalent in Tenterden. It may be a development of residential properties which has sports facilities that come with it, but I don't know what the local context is to see if that's particularly relevant or not. The other point I wanted to make, which is why I put my hand up originally, was Mr. Morgan has suggested there are things that could be done in due course around naming individuals and confirming who the bodies will be. I take it from that at this moment in time, we still don't know who the people are or would be, but I wonder if there is a realistic time frame that they are working to, the appellant is working to, where they are confident they will be able to tell us who those bodies will be, whether they be owners, operators, managers, whatever the breakdown of those structures are, if there is a realistic timetable in which we may understand who those people will be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, well, there's a few things to take on board for the appellant, but I don't think there's a few points that have been put forward. Unless there's anything else that anyone wants to say on this, I think we can, I've probably heard enough on this, but is there anything that anyone else would like to just say that hasn't been covered? And like I say, we will be looking at the Section 106 anyway, and conditions and planning conditions as well. It might be covering some of this as well under planning conditions. So sorry, Ms. Humphreys.
Thank you, sir. Just one quick point to end with. The mechanisms in the 106 have been put in place really on a, almost without prejudice basis. Just because the mechanisms exist in the 106 doesn't mean that we ultimately will be able to find an owner, a user, etc. So I'll just end with that, if that's okay.
Oh yeah, yes, I can understand that a Section 1, if permission is granted, the Section 106 agreement is probably quite preferable to other ways of dealing with it. But anyway, I can see that. So, Mr. Morgan, you've got another say on that now.
Briefly, sir, the only outcome of what Ms. Humphreys has referred to, therefore, is that the 106 trigger that we both agree will bite and it will do its job.
Well, we'll deal with that when we look at the 106. But like, actually, going on to the 106, I would still like, hopefully fairly soon next week, some idea of at least a firmed up draft and also the SIL compliance as well from the council. That is some idea of to justify these obligations that are going in the section 106. But anyway, if that can be brought, provided sometime next week, that would be helpful. So Ms. Humphreys again on this, I assume. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, sir. We could give you a partial SIL statement if you want, which doesn't have the governance in it, or wait until we have everything firmed up. I don't know what your preference is.
Well, it depends how close to the what we're discussing, but I'm happy to wait for a bit more to be firmed up. But hopefully it'll get firmed up next week.
Yeah.
I'm hoping by the end of next week I'll have all of that, and
Okay.
and then the following week we're going to be looking. So it'll give me a chance to actually look at it. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. So in that case, I'm happy to adjourn now, and for lunch. It's a very late lunch. We are looking at ecology coming up. So if we're going to we can have a session this afternoon to introduce the ecology witness. Are there any views on that, Mr. Howard Williams? It's your witness. So can I have a view on about?
Yes, sorry,
yeah.
sir. I'm just trying to mute whilst seeking to see whether Ms. Forster is here to do that. So I have to say that on the basis of the discussion we had yesterday afternoon, my clear understanding was that we were not going to be dealing with ecology today.
Right. Yeah. No. That was what I said. But yeah. I mean, bearing in mind, we seem to have made up a bit of time. Actually, that's quite. I mean, I don't know whether that's a good thing or not, but it means that we've somehow managed to get through these discussions quicker than perhaps allowed for. Although not that much quicker, really. But I mean, we've taken. I've gone on a lot longer anyway, so so it's probably not that much quicker than we've allowed for anyway. But so in other words, there's not much point in actually calling an ecology witness at this stage. No. So is there anything else that anyone feels needs to be dealt with at this stage before I'll adjourn until 9:30 on next Tuesday then in that case? That's Tuesday, the 15th of February. So, and then that will be the ecology witnesses for that day. And hopefully well, you were suggesting that ecology may not take quite as long anyway. So, so in that case, the inquiry is adjourned until 9:30 on the 15th of February.